From Anshe Sfard Bethel Emeth Congregation, it's time to take 10 minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to our discussion of Parashat Matot-Masei, the road back. In Masei, there is a list of Masaot. Vayis'u Meramses, Vayis'u Bnei Yisrael Meramses Vayachanu B'Sukkot, Vayis'u Me'ilim, Vayachanu Vayamsuv, Vayis'u Miyamsuv. They went from here, they camped over there. They went from here, they camped to there. What is the point of all these Masaot? We know where they went. Go back to Exodus, to earlier parts of Bamidbar. You can see where the Jews went. Why do we need a travel log of where the Jews went? The Rabbi of Slonim lays down a beautiful principle about this. I'd like to expand upon it a little further. He says that there's a basic principle, a premise. When we're studying Torah, that Torah is not a history book, but rather the Torah is there to tell us something. It's nitzchiyut. It's an eternal guide for us. So what is the eternal message in these masaot, these travels? He says that there is a notion here mentioned from the name of the Degel, an early Hasidic writer, in the name of the Baal Shem Tov, that the founder of Hasidus, that these 42 stations where the Jews traveled represent the Jew and his 42 travels, the 42 stops a person makes from life until hopefully he reaches that level of nitzchiyut, of eternity. These travels are progressive. They're Me'eretz Mitzrayim. They're out of Egypt. Egypt is the realm of Tumah, of impurity, and they are to the land of Israel, the Makor HaKdusha, the source of holiness. And don't forget, when they reach the land of Israel, they'll have Shiva Shekivshu. They'll have the 7 years of conquest. That's 42 plus 7 is 49. With the 49, one might suggest, they reach the 49 levels of wisdom, of chesed, of midot, of character traits. There are 42 steps of character building, and through the 7 years of conquest, they reach those levels. The Jewish people are about to establish a nation. There will be Gilui Shechina. There will be Kedusha. They will sanctify the land of Israel. There in the land of Israel, there will be Gilui Shechina. There will be the revelation of the divine presence. After all, the land of Israel, in its pristine form, is a place where Einei Hashem Elokecha doresh ota. Tamid Einei Hashem Elokecha ba merishit hashana v'ad acharit shana. The land of Israel is a place where the eyes of God are on it, from the beginning to the end of the year. So what are these masaot? These masaot represent the Jew trying to bring holiness and Shekhinah and divine presence into his life. Represented, ultimately, by the arrival in the land of Israel, where the Shekhinah is found, where the divine presence is found. Now we find ourselves now in the period of the 3 weeks, the period between Shivas Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, commemorating the destruction of the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, the Beis Hamikdash. Regarding the destruction, we know V'ga'ala nafshi etchem. One of the ideas of the destruction, as expressed in the end of a different book of Vayikra, is V'ga'ala nafshi etchem, that God will despise the Jewish people, God forbid. What does that mean? Says Rashi, based on the Midrash Sifri, he says, Zeh siluk shchina. When it comes to exile, there's an element of siluk shchina, of the divine presence going away, going up. Usually the presence is, so to speak, metaphorically here, it's present, it's with us, and then God, so to speak, goes up, ascends back to the heavens in rejection of the Jewish people in our relationship. The Rabbi of Slonim points out that these 22 days of the 3 weeks, so to speak, are 22 days corresponding to the 22 days of the high holidays. From Rosh Hashanah to the last day of Simchas Torah is 22 days in Israel, let's say. And those 22 days of sadness are like the black backdrop to build the 22 days of holiness later on in the year as we build our relationship with God once again. The Gemara Rosh Hashanah, Talmud of Rosh Hashanah says that there were various stages of the Siluk Shekhinah, of the divine presence leaving the Jewish people, so to speak. The Gemara there in Lamed Aleph and 31 says that Eser Masaod Nasa Shekhinah, that there were 10 stages of the Siluk Shekhinah, of the divine presence leaving the Jewish people. They left the cherubs, they left the desert. The Gemara goes on, based on various verses describing the Siluk Shekhinah, God leaving the place. Also, in a parallel fashion, there are 10 places where the Sanhedrin left, where the Sanhedrin used to be, and where the Sanhedrin went to. Lishkas Hagazis, L'Chanut, L'Yushalayim, the Sanhedrin as a symbol of the Siluk Shekhinah, the leaving of the divine presence among the Jewish people. The Sanhedrin, repository of divine presence, kept moving farther and farther away from the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. But this is explicit in Yechezkel in various places. The beginning of Yechezkel in many ways is about, yes, divine revelation, but it's about a revelation of a divine presence which is leaving. For instance, Yechezkel 10:18, Vayetzi kavod Hashem me'al miftan habayit, that the honor, the glory of God left the threshold of the sanctuary. Or in chapter 11, he says as follows, Vayal kavod Hashem, chapter 11, verse 23, the divine presence, the glory of God left me'al toch ha'ir, from the city itself. Even the city of Jerusalem lost the divine presence. There's a Midrash in Eicha, which reads as follows. There in the Peticha, Midrash Eicha says, what does it mean in Yechezkel that the divine glory left the threshold of the house? Rabbi Yacha said it's compared to a king who was leaving his palace and he was angry. As he was leaving, he was rubbing against the walls, and he was crying and he was kissing the walls, and he says, Oi, Shalom Beit Paltin Shali, peace unto you, my palace. Hoi Beit Malchuti, Oi, woe is for my kingly place. Hoi Shalom Beit Yikari, my dear house. So too, when God left the temple, he was kissing the walls of the Beis HaMikdash, the pillars of the Beis HaMikdash. He was crying and saying, Hoi Shalom Beit Mikdashi, Hoi Shalom Beit Malchuti, peace unto you, the walls and the beams of my house. God left the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. The Gemara, however, says that with this notion that somehow God has left the temple, this is not necessarily our final fate. The Gemara in Brachos says in Vav Beis that Rabbi Chalbo says that if you help a chassan and kala rejoice at their wedding, then Rav Nachman says Ki'ilu bana churva achas michurva Yerushalayim. Rejoicing at a wedding helps bring back a little bit of the destructed Jerusalem. Ki yashiv shavut haaretz kvar rishona. God will bring back one day the land of Israel to its pristine original form. The Gemara, the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says it very clearly, and it's very simple, and that is Asara sheyoshvim voskim b'Torah shechina shriya b'neiam. That if you want to have divine presence, you get 10 Jews together and sanctify God's name and learn some Torah and say Kaddish D'Rabbanan. You bring the divine presence even in exile. And the Mishnah goes on to say even 3 and even 5 and even 1, 2 and even 1. Any place where a person is learning the names of God, the Torah itself, which is the name of God, any place where a Jew learns Torah, then indeed there is divine presence. A person can take the road back. There is a road back to that divine presence. Yes, the Jews went from Egypt to the land of Israel, bringing themselves divine presence, Shekhinah. Then there was the destruction of the temple, and divine presence went up from this part of the temple and that part of the city. But now we as Jews are able to take the 42 Masot, to retrace the steps of our ancestors out of the desert and bring ourselves back to a place of divine presence. Whether it's return to the land of Israel, return to God, return to Torah, all of this will bring the Shekhinah back again, and we'll reach the final destination, and in some ways we will reach the Holy Land. Thank you for joining us here at the Anshe Sfard Beth Lameth congregation here in Memphis, Tennessee, for our discussions, the Parsha, and this period of the year. Join us each week for our discussions. Check for archives of previous Parshiot. Thanks to Jason Lefkowitz for his technical assistance. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein. To learn more, visit ASBEE.org.